Okay, let's go through the architecture behind the Connections Q&A bot. So it starts with a platform, and we use IBM Bluemix in this case to do a couple of things. First of all, Bluemix, for those that don't know, is IBM's platform as a service. And it allows us to build applications, but also reuse services from IBM. And one of those services is called IBM Retrieve and Write. And this is one of the Watson, one of the cognitive services. It's doing the question and answer part of our chatbot. Now, the other thing that you're probably familiar with is IBM Connections Cloud. So Connections Cloud has our Ask the Offering Managers community, and in there is that forum that lots and lots of IBMers are interacting with a handful of offering managers to ask questions and get answers and hopefully help each other out in the process. Now, the other thing on Bluemix is, alluded to, we can build applications, right? So there's custom code that I've written. And I call that application Social.js, and its job is to really kind of give a JavaScript framework so that we can begin interacting with the Connections Cloud data and also wire that into other services like Retrieve and Write. So the first part here is that we need to get the data out of Connections Cloud. So I have this Connections client code that really is just kind of like a JavaScript HTTP client that's making all of the relevant calls over to Connections Cloud. The other important detail that it's doing is that it's converting what was historically Atom, the Atom protocol, the XML data that lots of our Connections Cloud information is in. It's converting that into JSON. And it's not converting everything, but it's converting the stuff that we really want to know. It's like who wrote it, what's the URL, what's the ID, and more importantly, what's the content. So we're getting data out of Connections Cloud, and we're also converting it down to JavaScript object notation. Now, the next part is that we take that information and we use a helper module that I've written called Connections Retrieve Rank. And so Connections Retrieve Rank, its job is to interact with the IBM Retrieve and Rank service. Because something about Retrieve and Rank, it's not really happening in real time. We're taking lots of data from Connections, we're feeding it through Connections Retrieve Rank, and then we're uploading it statically into Retrieve Rank. So think of it like this. You've got JSON data from Connections. We need that data to be in a certain format so that it can be processed by Retrieve Rank. And that's really what Connections Retrieve Rank does. And I'll show that just a little bit more in a moment. Now, the last leg is that we actually upload that into IBM Retrieve Rank. And then if you wanted to, you could use Retrieve Rank to do training on the data, but we've got a way to short circuit that through the Retrieve Rank module that I wrote. So great. So now we've got everything available. We've got our data. We've got our question and answer set ready to go. We switch over to IBM Work Services. And on top of IBM Work Services, we have Workspace, as you saw it. And inside of Workspace, you saw me typing messages. At some point, the question annotation is what gets triggered, right? So one of those messages actually kicks off and Work Services says, I've got a question here. And what it does is Work Services will send me that question via a webhook. And so it's calling out to my application, and that application is called Workspace Connections. So Workspace Connections is the chatbot. And what's important here is historically, on the client side, the application that you wrote, it used to be that it was making the request to Connections to get information. With webhooks, what happens is now we have the IBM side on demand telling us when it's got something of importance. So that's a lot different. It's a much, easier programming model because now we're getting information on demand only when it's something that we really care about. And so in this case, again, we're getting the question that's coming over, we're being given a confidence, and then Workspace Connections, the chatbot, can act on it. And so what it does is now that it's got a question and it's pretty confident that it's a question that it needs to handle, it makes a request out to retrieve and rank. And so it's doing a search and retrieve and rank. You saw the list of answers that it got back. It got back not only the answers, but also the confidence, so it kind of sifts through them, determines which one is the one it wants to use, and then what does it do? It packages that up as a message that is compatible with Workspace, and then we just send it back to the Workspace, and you see that as a reply from the actual chatbot. So that's it, and really it is just kind of the careful coordination of these various services, but as we see in just a moment, the amount of code to do that is not that much, and that's, again, one of the fun parts about not only the JavaScript programming model, but also a lot of the services IBM has built out to make consuming these cognitive services that easy.